Good afternoon, dear activists, and it's very good to have you join us today for this chat on the general election. We have some reporters here covering the speech. Later on, I'll be taking some questions from them, but thereafter, we will adjourn for our own separate Q&A sessions. I would like to start by thanking all of you for your hard work and your many contributions throughout this campaign. The PAP received a clear mandate in this election. 61.2% is a solid majority of those who support and want a PAP government, although it is lower than what we had hoped for. Naturally, we are disappointed about losing one more GRC. The Sengkang team gave it their all, but the desire for more opposition was too strong. Our hearts also go out to our teams in Aljunied and Hougang. They have worked hard over many years to serve the residents and win back the ground. But these are hard grounds where we are the opposition, and it takes real commitment, courage, and resilience to fight there. So I thank everyone for your gallant efforts in this election. Overall, it is quite clear that voters wanted the PAP in charge. The opposition explicitly reassured voters that they were not aiming to replace the PAP. The opposition also did not seriously engage on the key issues with workable alternative solutions. Instead, they chipped away at unhappiness over different aspects of policies which have impacted voters. And we were up against a major trend that has been there for many years, and that is the desire to have more opposition in Parliament, to check the PAP, to have more diversity of views, and debate on policy alternatives. The party will do a thorough review of GE2020, but I wanted to share with all our activists this afternoon some of our preliminary thoughts and to set the results in context. First, let's touch on our expectations going into GE2020. What is the best that the PAP could have done in this GE as we were entering the general election? In fact, in the run-up to GE2020, PM had highlighted on several occasions that this was not going to be an easy election because of the pain and anxiety that Singaporeans are experiencing during this crisis. PM said it will be tough. He said this isn't a feel-good GE. Neither PM nor anyone in the Central Executive Committee expected a repeat of 2015. But many pundits and commentators thought that we could get above 70%. And the opposition capitalized on this and claimed that they feared a wipeout. But we should remember, only twice in the last 9 GEs has the PAP received anywhere close to 70% or beyond. Once in 2015, when we had sent 69.9%, that was our SG50 year and the year of MM's passing. And the second in 2001, after 9/11 attack, where we got 75.3%. These 2 GEs were outliers. In 7 out of 9 GEs since 1984, the PAP has won between 60 and 60% of the total votes. Indeed, in 4 out of these 9 races, we got 63% or less. So this year's 61.2% is the third worst outcome over 9 GEs across 36 years. It is at the low end of the expected range of 60 to 65%. It is not a very good result, but it is within the range of expectations, and we've been here before. The expectation that the PAP should have had a result at the top end this time, I think, has colored the outcome as a setback. Second, how should we interpret the results of GE2020? A reasonable expectation would have been to achieve an outcome around 64 to 65%. That means somewhere between the outcomes of the 2011 and the 2015 GEs. We came in at the low 60s, not 65%. That is about 4 percentage points less than we might have hoped for. That's roughly 100,000 votes lost. Why did the PAP fail to win this 100,000 votes? I'll share some of our initial thinking. First, we must give credit where it is due. The Workers' Party ran a good campaign that spoke to the desire amongst many for checks and balances. Their call to give the PAP government no blank check, I think, resonated with many people who wanted more opposition voices in Parliament. Second, we saw the emergence of a new party, PSP, with strong appeal in some parts of Singapore, cutting into our strongholds, in the West in particular. Third, this was a digital campaign, and we do not do so well in this arena. We tried our best. We produced a lot of good content online, but not all of this connected with netizens, especially on newer platforms like Instagram and Telegram, where the platforms require different sort of content, say from a platform like Facebook. And as with a normal campaign, the negative messages carry further reach than positive messages, and this is further accentuated on the internet. A related point then is how we performed with younger voters who access most of the information online. In fact, much of the commentary that you read nowadays has focused on the young, and there have been suggestions that they have abandoned the PAP nationally. But let's again see this in perspective. In many constituencies across Singapore with young voters, we received good support. For example, in Punggol West, we won 61% of the votes. And there are some facts to bear in mind. First-time voters in the age of 21 to 24 are less than 10% of the electorate. In total, the 20s and 30s age group constitute roughly 1/3 of the electorate. But those who are 40 and above are close to 70% of the electorate. So the swing against the PAP was not concentrated solely amongst the young. And it was not just about unhappiness about the PAP style of campaigning or how we talk about race or POFMA. In particular, there was a fall in support amongst those in the 40s and 50s, and perhaps even in their early 60s. This was due primarily to the economic pain they have suffered, loss of income, difficulties faced by contractors and subcontractors, of whom there are many, businesses that have been disrupted, jobs that are lost or forced to downsize due to lower paying occupations. All of this hurt the PAP support. And this is quite understandable. Although we have made great efforts to lessen the pain and impact, there has been severe disruption to jobs and families. We also saw a fall in support among several private landed and private condominium dwellers, which could be related to the economic issues I just highlighted. In 2015, this segment had swung towards the PAP, but this time the support was not as strong, perhaps because they felt they were not sufficiently supported during the crisis. I have shared the reasons why the PAP didn't do as well as we had hoped for, but we should also recognize that this was a clear mandate and that voters want a PAP government. The outcome could also have been worse, especially given the difficulties that people were facing on the ground. So we also need to ask ourselves, why did the PAP manage to retain 61%? In fact, the PAP has never gone below 60% all these years, and that's because the base kept faith with the PAP, knowing that the PAP kept faith with its base. What is this base? They are the working class, the middle class, the heartlands of Singapore. And the PAP must continue to keep faith with our base. Our policies must always tilt in favor of the less fortunate and vulnerable. This is in the PAP's roots and DNA. We must never waver in our commitment to social justice, to preserve social mobility for all Singaporeans, and to build a more fair and just society. Finally, how do we move forward from here? It would be difficult to get near 70% as we did in 2015. This is because the desire for an opposition is strong, and even those who prefer the PAP as government would vote tactically for the opposition where it is credible. But we can aim to get at least the upper end of the 60% to 65% range. So the question is, what must we do to get back another 4% in the next general election? There will be many suggestions through the course of our thorough review, but there are two things that I would like to highlight. First, we must do a better job appealing to the young. We must work hard to understand and connect with young voters. They have different aspirations, hopes, and expectations. The issues they care about are different from the older generation and the older Singaporeans, and they also look at existing issues differently. So we need to build trust and a new social compact with younger Singaporeans. We also need to mobilize the young people so that they will do something not just for themselves, but for others needing help. In fact, quite a few of our MPs, especially the new ones, are young Singaporeans themselves who have come up the hard way and feel passionately about helping others to succeed. We will need to get more young people like them to identify with the PAP as a party that provides hope and a path to the future and build our bonds with a new generation of voters. Second, equally crucially, we have to address the economic pain of a substantial segment of those in their 40s and 50s. This is the sandwich group who are looking after elderly parents and also have young children to care for. We recognized this was an issue. This segment, this group faced difficulties even before the COVID crisis hit us. But since then, I think the challenges have been exacerbated. Many of the schemes and programs in the 4 budgets this year were aimed at this group. Unfortunately, no amount of help will be enough in a crisis of this magnitude. So we will continue to review and update our policies, and we will do whatever we can to address their anxieties and pain during this difficult period. In every general election, we tell our candidates and activists there are no safe seats and we must fight for every vote. And we are reminded of this yet again in GE2020. The dynamics in every election is volatile and completely unpredictable. Sentiments can shift very quickly in 9 days and across the entire island. Sometimes people don't take us seriously when we say that you may have a freak election result. But in fact, this is quite possible, especially if the starting point is that the PAP will get about 60% of the vote. So let us all be prepared. Subsequent general elections will be much tougher than this one. We are unlikely to exceed 65% of the vote in future. The desire for diversity in Parliament, for checks and balances is permanent. It is here to stay. And we must be prepared for this new reality. For now, Singaporeans want to see the PAP in power, but they also want a credible opposition to check on the PAP. And now that the Workers' Party has more MPs in Parliament, they cannot just continue asking the government questions. It is also their duty to put forward serious policy alternatives to be scrutinized and debated. In fact, the WP tells voters that they are not trying to take over the government, they are only seeking a stronger check on the PAP government, which is a message they know voters want to hear. The WP says that their long-term aim is to deny the PAP 2/3 of the seats in Parliament. But I have no doubt that they want to displace the PAP and form the government one day, except that they find it inconvenient to acknowledge this now. And there is nothing wrong with that ambition. It is what parties in parliamentary democracies exist for, to win over voters' confidence and support in order to win power, form the government, and carry out their policies. It is part of a democracy at work. So we must be clear-eyed about this. The PAP must argue for what we believe in, govern Singapore well, and keep on winning the trust and support from new generation of voters. Remember, the right to leadership cannot be inherited. Just because the PAP has governed Singapore since independence doesn't mean that it always will govern Singapore throughout. We must continue to strive to win the trust of our people, and we must prove that we can govern well. Then we can develop a stable political balance, and the PAP can continue winning future elections. Now that we have put the election behind us and elected a strong team to represent Singaporeans, let us stay focused on doing our best for Singapore and Singaporeans. We have 5 years to overcome the problems, consolidate on the ground, and show voters what we can do. Comrades, the work to win GE 2025 starts now. Thank you.